And this is Fox News.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Express yourself into the groove. The Guam Chamber of Commerce celebrates its 99th anniversary at the Dusatani Resort on May 6th with the theme of Madonna's Vogue. The Chamber's membership includes many corporations, large and small, entrepreneurs, and nonprofit organizations. Members play a key part in making Guam a star-bright place to live, work, and play. Let's congratulate the Guam Chamber of Commerce and its members on celebrating its 99th anniversary.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, especially on Tailgater Shirt Friday. Right, Jose?
Absolutely.
Jose, you're a pretty creative guy. See if you can make something out of today's editorial in the Daily News.
I'll do my best, but that's a really tall order.
It is.
It is Tall Tales. It helps to have the theme song, of course.
Yes.
But it could be greater than the editorial. Our view, taking advantage of job fairs for various reasons. The post-pandemic recovery continues, and with that brings a number of job fairs. The Wuhan virus pandemic, as we all are aware, wiped out many jobs and caused the unemployment rate to increase. Now, when Wuhan seems to be finally disappearing from our surroundings, employers are coming out to seek potential employees who could fill positions that have been vacant for a long time. And that's when job fairs come in handy. Job fairs are helpful for those not only looking for employment, but also for those who want to explore new careers and discover new interests. These fairs gather big and small employers and is a great way to receive information because applicants are able to interact with employees of these companies. Applications and resumes are usually accepted, and sometimes on-the-spot interviews are offered, allowing for convenience and speed. Just like dating. Just come in your best job interview outfit and a resume on hand. Recently, the University of Guam and Payless held job fairs for numerous employers and positions. Meanwhile, the Guam Community College hosted a reverse job fair to help connect graduating students with potential employers. Guam's unemployment rate went down from 4.4% in September to 4% in December, according to the latest Guam Department of Labor Bureau of Labor Statistic report. And this is good news. The report also shows, however, that many people are not looking for jobs for various reasons, one being the belief that there are no jobs out there. All the reasons provided are completely valid: family responsibility, having to attend school, needing child care support, and they do hinder opportunities for those who need employment. As for those who have trouble finding employment because they don't know what jobs are out there, attending job fairs may be a big help. And don't fret, If you missed out, companies like Payless are still accepting applications through their sites. Take advantage of job fairs, because even if job seekers do not find the right job for them at the time, they may be able to connect with hiring managers and be informed when the right position does open up.
Was there a punchline in there somewhere, Jose?
Yes, there will be no casino at this year's job fair.
Wow.
The mayors voted it down.
Thank you very much, Jose.
That was it. That was a good, public service announcement.
I guess so. It was something, but it certainly wasn't an editorial, was it?
Not at all.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a peek and see what we got on the card for today. We've got, of course, we start out with systemic racism, the Public Law 36-34 feature, and then we've got the governor versus money. Mm-hmm. Louis Baza versus the bar. Yeah, I'm talking about the bar is known to lawyers, like the Bar Association.
Oh, he wasn't serving beyond 2 a.m.
No. And we've got the government of Guam versus the Navy. And then Parkinson is wont to support Fisher. Yeah, now he's won't all the time, right? But that's a word that you seldom hear used in that particular context. And I'll see if I can give you an example. I really like citrus fruit, but I'm wont to gorge on limes. Something I just don't want to do. Okay, so then I've got Enriquez versus Okada versus Queensberry, which I've been talking about but haven't really had a chance to spend much time on. Starting out with the Public Law 36-34 portion, you can always count on our legislature to do it wrong. They're supposed to publish a notice a week before a meeting and 2 days before the meeting. They're supposed to include the agenda of the meeting that they're giving the notice for, and that agenda is supposed to put a person on notice as to what is to be discussed. Well, I'm looking at the agenda for the session that will start next Tuesday, and item number 14 on the agenda it starts out motions, and it's veto bill number 13-37. That's good. Next item, potential items for the agenda. Bill 20-37 and Bill 73-37. Now, we don't know if any bills are going to be on the agenda at all. This is such a cockeyed way to do things, and it just points out how ineffective the legislature is, especially the leadership, and that would be the chairman of rules, Barnett, and the speaker, Therese Tetlahi. Chris Barnett and Therese Tetlahi.
Remember a time when you used potential to soften the blow of someone who didn't make it? I'm sorry, Bill, you didn't make the list on the agenda, but you have potential.
Yeah, you got potential, so try again next year.
But we're not going to ask you this time.
No, yeah. Yeah, either it's the agenda or it's not the agenda. I just love references to Schrodinger's cat, but I guess it's Schrodinger's agenda. You know, these items are both on the agenda and not on the agenda at the same time.
It's like Pelosi's bill.
Yeah.
You want to know what's in it? Got to pass it.
Yeah. So it's Bill 20 and Bill 73 are on the agenda, the Schrodinger agenda. They're both on and off the agenda, just like Schrodinger's cat was both dead and alive at the same time until it was observed. Here, it's waiting for the motion to be made. But if both of these bills require motions, why even have a session? Why even bother? Yeah, you guys got to work a little harder. This is not what we're paying for down there, Therese Tetlahi. Okay, so we got that. Next, I've got the governor versus money. And the governor's money problems are just all over the place. The hospital is what? $30 million in the hole. Yeah, they owe vendors $30 million. She did all of those midnight raises on December 31st, let people resign, take large lump sum payments as much as $11,000 as far as her chief of staff, and then hire them back on January 1. She's got some retroactive salary increases that are now in the hands of the Attorney General, which we understand the Attorney General is investigating. She promised everybody a salary increase, but before the salary increase could be properly funded, she was supposed to send a report to the legislature, which she didn't, but she paid out the raises anyhow, perhaps causing a lot of grief for certifying officers in the executive branch, and causing a lot of grief at the Department of Education because they didn't get any raises. The acting superintendent, Judy Wonpat-Ten, who knows exactly how raises work, is holding out hope that perhaps at the end of April, well, it's past the end of April, isn't it?
And past midnight.
Yeah. So it just seems to go on and on and on and on. Now, here's a story that ran in Candid. And of course, Candid is the only one that's really holding the governor's feet to the fire on this.
And it's a good story.
It is a good story. And here's what Candid says. Governor Leon Guerrero and Lieutenant Governor Josh went on an election season hiring spree, then used public funds to gift their Adelup staff mega 1,000 pay raises after they won re-election. All the while, hospital and public school finances were in crisis and private sector workers struggle. According to a comparison of staffing patterns between September 30, 2022, right before the election, and the latest report, March 31, 2023, Leon Guerrero and Tenorio gave 43 of their 101 employees pay raises, none of which were below 4-digit increases per annum. At least $1,000 per annum. The pay raises totaled $332,685. That total does not include the cost to taxpayers of benefits, retirement, insurance, etc., attached to all those increases. But that isn't all that increased at taxpayer expense. The net payroll of the governor's office increased from $4,956,465, just about $5 million before the general election, to $5,648,541 this past March 31. A $692,076 increase in personnel expenses before factoring in benefits. With benefits, the lieutenant governor hired 18 highly paid staffers between the periods before and after the election. 10 of those new staffers now are paid net annual pay of $50,000 or more. 3 of those make more than the governor's salary, and 5 are paid more than the lieutenant governor himself. 19 of the governor's office 101 employees, or nearly 20% of the staff, are paid more than Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio. These pay raises do not include the pay raises given to cabinet members, which is a matter under research by Candid and other media companies. According to the notifications of personnel actions of 5 governor's office employees authorized and signed by the governor, Governor Leon Guerrero, increases in pay were authorized January 24 and made retroactive to January 1. Retroactive pay is against Guam law and carries criminal penalties for any GovGuam official who authorizes such pay and certifies the funds to make the payments. Attorney General Douglas Moylan confirmed his office is investigating the matter and also issued a stern warning to GovGuam certifying officers that they can go to prison if found guilty of violating the retroactive pay prohibition law. The $1 million payroll increase cost and pay raises happened in January, more than 4 months before the rank and file classified employees on the general pay plan received 22% pay raises. GovGuam Department of Education employees on the GPP still are waiting for their pay raises. Acting Superintendent Judith Wampat 10 issued a memo 10 days before the rest of the government received its raises, informing her employees their pay raises could not be paid because Adelupe's budget office had not released G2E's allotment for the increases. The timing of the pay raises also fit the time frame of the hospital, which began accruing more than $20 million in vendor payables that now are aging beyond 90 days. The comparative spreadsheet of the pay of each Adelupe before the election and March 31 of this year follows. Now I've got that list. It's a pretty interesting list. On top of the list, we've got 2 lawyers, Leslie Travis and Jeffrey Moose, both of whom have titles of special assistant. Both were making $126,409 before the election. They bumped up to $133,700 after the election. Well, it's at least a small raise. And then we have a certain Clinton E. Rigel, who is the deputy chief of staff, who was not on the payroll at September 30 because he was still in the legislature, where he made $55,307 per annum before he moved to the legislature, where he now makes $101,374. Somebody asked the other day why Clint moved to it's pretty easy to figure out, isn't it?
Well, it pays to be an Adelupe insider at the Senate.
It certainly does. Yeah, and then here's a real surprise. We've got Esther Joan Agagi, who is a special assistant making $100,746.
When she was the former commander of the Guard?
The adjutant general. Adjutant general.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she didn't retire.
Well, as the adjutant general, she is. It's a complicated sort of thing. As the adjutant general, she is a drill status guardsman. Now, if you're a drill status guardsman, the money comes from the federal treasury when you're drilling, or when you're on annual training, or when you're on any other kind of active duty. The money comes from the national government. If you are a Department of Military Affairs employee, then the money comes from the government of Guam Treasury. And when I was in the Guard, there probably were about 24 Department of Military Affairs employees. They're historically, when back in the days of National Guard armories, they're the guys that fed the horses and put coal in the stove in the wintertime, etc. The housekeeping guys. But the adjutant general is a drill status employee. So from Monday to Friday, the adjutant general is an employee of the Department of Military Affairs, a GovGuam employee. So although she may have retired in her military status, she's apparently hung on in her civilian status. But $100,000?
And that was created just for her.
Well, she's a special assistant. So a special assistant, you want to hear the job description for a special assistant? Are you ready? That's it.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Whatever the governor tells you she wants you to do. But if you are a special assistant, you can draw your retirement and your GovGuam pay. That one particular title. So it could very well be that Esther Agagi retired. Now, here's another wrinkle. If you are a guardsman, and I've explained this before, the U.S. Army has two reserve components. One reserve component is called the Army Reserve. The other reserve component is called the Army, the Army, what is it? The Army National Guard. That's the second reserve component, the U.S. Army National Guard. So if you are a drill status guardsman in the Guam National Guard, you are a member of the Guam National Guard, and you're also a member of that reserve component, the Army National Guard of the United States. But when you retire as an Army reservist. So she took her military retirement, so she's drawing a retirement from the Army Reserve if she's 60. If you are 60 years old and have what are called 20 good years, then you receive a retirement annuity. You can retire on 20 good years short of 60. You're entitled to commissary, PX, military flights, but no annuity. So I suspect she probably is drawing the annuity, all of the military privileges, and she's drawn another $100,000 from the government of Guam. Must be nice. And let's see, we've got Stephanie Flores, who is a special assistant in the Guam State Clearinghouse, who went from $85,000 to $95,000. Stephanie Flores, you may remember, covered herself with glory when Roy Gamboa filed his papers to be a candidate for the legislature, and she said, "Can you stay on for a couple more weeks for transition purposes?" Causing Roy, allowing or permitting Roy, or better yet, enabling Roy to violate the so-called Hatch Act and found in violation by the Civil Service Commission. Rose Ramsey, a GovGuam insider ever since. Rose Ramsey was not on the payroll last fall. She is now at 90 grand. Let's see, we've got Carlotta Leon Guerrero. I guess Carlotta must have screwed up because before the election she was at 90 grand. After the election she's at 90 grand. And we have the fourth branch of government, who was not on before the election, is now making $85,181. The same amount of salary as Crystal J. Paco San Augustine, who went up to 85,101 from 75 grand before the election. We've got Ricky Orsini, who is part of the government insiders, a special assistant who is a policy director. She went from 75 grand to 85, 181. We've got Elisa James, Lynette Munya, Arlene Santos, who is the program director for war claims. And she was 76, 188 before the election. That's where she is right now. We've got Robert S. Lizama, the former mayor of Gigo, still stuck at 75 grand. And let's see here. Logan Regis, who I think is the digital editor for the governor's office. Logan Regis is, oh gosh, he's only making 65 grand? Wow. Starvation wages at the governor's office. And let's see here. We've got Robert Alvarez, who's probably better known as Bobby Alvarez. Bobby Alvarez, 55,000 before, 55,000 afterwards. Now, refresh my recollection on this, Jose. Wasn't Bobby Alvarez one of the key players in the FART?
I think he was the coordinator.
For the FART.
Yes.
Yeah. You want to explain once again what that acronym means?
I'm trying to remember who it was that was sent the email by Bobby Alvarez inviting him to be a part of the response team from Adelup to counter Facebook posts that were critical of the governor. And so we called those people the Facebook Administrative Response Team.
Very good.
Otherwise known as the FART.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of farting online.
There was. Yeah, that was the director of mass transit at the time.
Oh,
Sel Babauta.
there you go.
Yeah,
Yep.
Sel Babauta.
Who declined?
Who declined, and then his tour with the mass transit ended shortly thereafter. I wonder if there's any connection there.
He took a Beano.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then his employment ended. And
Promptly.
and then not long after his employment ended, he came out and outed the FART. Yeah, I guess you could say well, I better not say that. Let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, right, Jose?
They weren't silent.
Yeah.
They were kind of deadly.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the governor versus dollars. Now, next we go on to Luis Baza versus the bar. Now, I talked about this yesterday, and John O'Connor wrote it up, but boy, John missed some really key points in this one. Let's take a short break, and we'll come back to John's workup.
Join us on May 12th as we host our annual PBS Guam Pledge Drive. Tune in and show your support for quality, educational, and entertaining programming. Your contributions help us continue to bring you thought-provoking documentaries, captivating cultural programs, and engaging children's shows. So tune in to PBS Guam Friday, May 12th from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. and pledge your support to help us keep Guam enriched, inspired, and entertained. Viva!
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY. And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, so here we go again. I just saw an interesting post by Jose Ted Pago, if I see if I can find it again. Yeah, here's Jose Ted Pago Jr. He says FART even created several Facebook groups to smear the opposition of Michael San Nicolas and Doug Moylan.
There was at least, I recorded about 9 or 10 of them. They all posed as Guam media pages or Guam news services. And the only articles they posted were stories against MSN, because remember, that's what the post was all about.
Yeah.
And all the people commenting were all people that lived in the Philippines. Very interesting.
Yeah.
That was kind of against the law, isn't it? To have a campaign off island or digital off island. I don't know what it had to do with Facebook.
I don't think so. Yeah. But I just think it's interesting that the FART got involved in the gubernatorial, and then the FART also launched an attack against Michael San Nicolas and Doug Moylan. So what's that old saying, Jose? 'Tis an ill wind that blows no one good.
Yeah.
I think that's it, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. You know, as we keep talking about the FART here, I notice you're cracking up back there.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, okay, back a nice entree for Luis Baza.
There you go.
Yeah, Luis Baza versus the bar. And by bar, I'm not talking about, Tiger's Tavern or something like that. I'm talking about the Bar Association, the professional organization of lawyers. And this is a John O'Connor story that ran in today's Post. A confirmation hearing for nominees to the Port Authority Board of Directors circled back to the Port 7 issue and Guam YT case as lawmakers peppered appointees Luis Baza and Francisco Santos with questions during a nearly 3-hour-long hearing Wednesday. The Port 7 matter refers to a group of current and former port employees who were involved in a years-long workmen's compensation controversy now settled by the PAG, Port of Guam. Guam YTK was a company that won a $14 million arbitration award against the port, later declared invalid by the Supreme Court of Guam. Some tempers flared between Baza and Senator Thomas Fisher, as the latter pressed Baza on conflicts of interest he may have had regarding the Port 7. Baza served as Deputy General Manager of the Port Authority from December 19 through December 2022. Sometime prior to that, he sat on the Civil Service Commission as its chair. Baza said he recused from the Port 7 cases at the CSC because of a business relationship with attorney Michael Phillips, who is now the former counsel for the port. But once at the port, Baza oversaw the Port 7 settlements. Fisher asked what change made that possible. Baza said he no longer had a business relationship with Phillips by that time and had never really seen the port cases. Now, if John O'Connor had been paying attention, he would have heard Senator Joanne Brown tell Baza, I was the director of the port at that time. I spent a lot of time at the Civil Service Commission because every one of these, when these Port 7 cases came before the commission, I was there. And I saw you there on the case where the standard of proof was the issue. Substantial evidence versus clear and convincing evidence. So you were there. John missed that. That's why I'm saying he missed a really key part of this testimony. So Luis Baza, I guess, is a double threat man. He'll sit on the Civil Service Commission, and then he'll run around to the other side and sit as management on one of the parties to the case that he sat on, not just an employee at the port, but we learned later on that he was quasi-counsel for the port. And I went through this yesterday, but this is really important, and this is a shocker.
Well, even that sentence, he said he had never really seen the Port 7 cases. So he had like half his eyes closed.
Yeah.
He only read every other sentence. What does didn't really see mean?
Really see them, yeah. Maybe he was looking at his phone when the cases came on. Yeah.
He was playing solitaire.
Yeah. So once again, Baza said that after Joe Mac, resigned after he'd been an employee for like 3 weeks, and then he resigned. And Rory had delegated his authority to Baza to settle the cases because Rory said he had a conflict. So Baza sat down and negotiated 2 settlement agreements, according to his own testimony, with counsel for the employees, and Baza sat down and negotiated them with the lawyers. Now, you don't have to be a lawyer to do something like that, but even lawyers understand who should be representing whom. As an example, the old saying is, a lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. Now, how about a fool that represents the agency? It's even worse. He got no business sitting down with counsel negotiating anything. But when he was asked, why did you do that? He said, well, we didn't have a lawyer. So if you ever go to GMH and you see Luis Baza parking his car as you go in, turn around and go to GRMC. Because heaven forbid that you go into the operating room and there's no surgeon there. Yeah, and then they said, well, why did you do that? How did you do that? And he said, well, Joe McDonald, left a couple settlements agreements, so I just used those for my template. So, if we take this reductio ad absurdum, Jose, all we need to do is for each of the agencies to hire counsel to come in and maybe make up a half dozen templates and, give them maybe $1,000 and let them go. And then just have Luis Baza come in there and do the negotiation, settle all the cases. I was literally just really shocked when I saw that. After a long, long time, you think, I've watched this government for 60 years, and I think I've seen everything, but I haven't.
Maybe it's because he was on a potential list.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe after he's done being a board member, that is, if he ever gets a chance. I can't imagine anybody voting to confirm these 2 guys that has any idea what went on at that hearing.
Is it like a roll call vote? We'll know who voted, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Back to Fisher. Fisher repeated his question a few times. Fisher asked, you were on the board, now you're running HR for the port, but when you were on the board, on the commission, you recused because it was a conflict of interest. But now you can do it. What changed? Fisher repeated his question a few times, and at some point, the 2 began to speak over each other in the exchange, which ended with Baza saying he had answered the question and had nothing else to add.
Oh, so the senators were there for him.
Yeah, and he gets to decide when he's done testimony.
Wow.
The senator then asked Baza if he informed the port board that he served at the Civil Service Commission while cases involving the port were under consideration. Baza said he did not, because he went to the port to act as the deputy GM for administration and finance, and in that position he reviewed cases beyond the Port 7. In other words, he didn't just review the Port 7, he reviewed other cases too. So there's no need to tell the board. I was on the Civil Service Commission. Baza, and of course, to stumble along and think that the board at the port didn't know he was on the Civil Service Commission. What do you think his cachet was for being hired to the? Oh, he's been on this, and he was before that. He was the executive director of the Civil Service Commission. So he went from executive director to the commission, and now from the commission to the port, and now the governor wants to put him on the port board. And once again, I got to repeat what I said yesterday, and that's this. I'm going to use my own situation as a classic example. I've been the director of education, but I should never, ever be on the board of education. No one who has ever served in an agency should ever be on the board for that agency. It is not a good idea, and I'll explain why. First of all, the people on the board, whether they know it or not, are going to tend to defer to that person, at least unconsciously going through this process. Well, he used to work there, so I think he probably really knows what's going on. That would be a case. Here's the case in spades. He was the director, so he knows all about this stuff. So if he thinks, if he's going to vote that way, if he made that motion, I can't see myself not voting in favor of that motion. Second reason, we don't put people on boards and commissions to repeat the same old thing over and over again. We bring people into boards and commissions to bring fresh minds, fresh ideas, new thoughts, creativity, if you will, critical thinking. And the only thing that the former director is going to bring with him is what his mindset was when he was a director. Or worse, he may use his position on the board to get even with people that he didn't like in the agency that he couldn't when he was there. Finally, the director should never serve on that board because he should serve as a board member, not as a former employee. So once again, no one who's ever been the director of an agency, or probably even an employee, should ever be on that agency. And this was ever true. It's true in spades for Louis Baza. And the current, and they did the same thing. The current Juan Calvo was the personnel management specialist for the Civil Service Commission. I'll spend some time someday discussing what I think the flaws in the Civil Service Commission are, but I don't need to do that right now. Let's take a short break here and we'll come back to the port.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
So we're back to Baza here at the Civil Service, at the legislature. Senator Fisher asked Baza if he informed the port board that he served at the Civil Service Commission while cases involving the port were under consideration. Baza said he did not because he went to the port to act as deputy GM for administration and finance, and in that position he reviewed cases beyond the Port 7. Baza also questioned why senators and nominees were discussing the Port 7 issue when it was a done deal. So this is a whole new role.
No kidding.
Yeah. I testified before a hearing this afternoon, Senator Kanata's hearing, and somehow I thought it was his hearing, not mine. And I didn't see it as my job to tell him how to run his hearing. I've run a few myself, but yeah, it's just amazing the chutzpah this guy has. He'll tell you which questions he's going to answer, what questions the board should answer. And boy, his choice of words was perfect. He said he wonders why they're discussing the Port 7 issue when it was a, quote, done deal. I'm emphasizing the word deal, the way the whole thing came down.
That's reminiscent of Hillary Clinton. What does it matter?
Yeah.
It's over with already.
Indeed. But concentrate on the word deal.
Oh.
Right? Yeah. So there were these 7 cases. There were terminations. And the way our system works, before an employee can be terminated, he has to be given a notice in writing of why he's being terminated. The employee then has 10 days to come and, if he wants to, sit down and discuss the matter with his director, defend himself, tell the director things he may have omitted. He can file papers, documents. He can even call witnesses before the director. He can bring counsel in. The director then makes his decision. If the director decides to terminate the employee has an appeal to the Civil Service Commission. If the Civil Service Commission sustains management, that is, the guy stays fired, he can appeal to the Superior Court. And if he loses at the Superior Court, he can take it to the Guam Supreme Court. So there's all kinds of due process style fairness built into this for the employee. And my own personal view is I like to see these things play out. I don't want to see somebody get fired because when he shouldn't get fired, because the boss doesn't like him, or because he made a minor mistake and the boss lowers the boom on him or something like that. On the other hand, I don't like to see employees get off when they should have been fired. Now, somewhere in there, I suppose you could work the word justice in there, but I'm not going to. But it really is bothersome when you have this elaborate procedure where there's so much protection for employees, and then management, back to the card here, the boxing card, when right in the middle of the first round, management throws in the towel and concedes the fight to the other side without even going through the procedural steps necessary. And when that happens, the first thing that pops into my mind is the word I just used, deal. Was a deal made there somewhere?
Was he supposed to throw the fight?
Yeah. We're going for the price on Wilson tonight, kid. It ain't your night. Yeah. So that's what happened. And maybe this is a Freudian slip. It was a done deal. We said, well, we're going to let you go. We'll give you this much money. Fisher would later discuss legal fees paid to counsel for the Port 7 individuals. He stated that counsel for Francis Cepeda, one of the 7, received about $87,400 in legal fees. Fisher noted that Cepeda's counsel was the McDonald Law Office. And McDonald, of course, had worked for the port, which is to say that you paid $87,453 to your own law firm. The conflict is so extraordinary, Fisher said. Joseph McDonald, a lawyer at the firm, served as port's legal counsel at the time of the Port 7 settlements. I think some of the settlements, not all of the settlements. However, Baza said Joseph McDonald wasn't working for the law, for that law office then. I wish that Fisher had pursued that a little bit more. This doesn't come out even. Fisher also noted that the McDonald firm billed the Port Authority for 437 hours of work and asked Baza to discuss his review of the billings. Baza said he can't discuss legal fees because he was told by Charles McDonald, a lawyer at the firm, that it was private. Fisher comes back and says it's actually not private. It's public information. The individual who received the windfall, your lawyer, is now telling you not to talk about it. I'll let the people of Guam decide what they think about that. Strange. Now, I have seen lawyers say that my invoices, my billing, is protected by the attorney-client privilege. No lawyer is going to tell you it's private. Attorney-client privilege because the notations in the invoices may indicate some of the matters that had been discussed by the attorney and the client, and lawyers zealously protect that attorney-client privilege. But once again, I wish Fisher would have pursued it a little bit more. I think he still could. Baza went on to say that Fisher went on to say that another counsel for another Port 7 individual he identified as attorney Ike Agagi received $307,500 in fees. $307,000. Again, Baza said he could not discuss it because he was told it was private information. Fisher said he has requested billing sheets through a disclosure request. So what we had here, we had Louis Baza, who was on the Civil Service Commission, and there's evidence before that hearing that he sat on at least one of the Port 7 cases as the chairman. In fact, according to Brown, screwed it up. Then he leaves the Civil Service Commission and is snapped up by the port. He unretires as the former executive director for the Civil Service Commission, goes on the payroll at the port. Rory then delegates him the authority to settle these cases, and he settles the same Port 7 cases. Now, you got to ask yourself, was it the same Louis Baza on the commission as the one who was doing the settlements? Was there any relationship in between the two? Just a happy coincidence? Does it cause anyone who knows the facts to scratch his head and say, that just doesn't seem right to me? Okay, so that was the hearing, and Frank Santos, who's the chairman. Now let's break for the big halftime show. In fact, let's break for the Lou Leon Guerrero show, Jose.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The high cost of not raising the debt limit. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The Director of National Intelligence says if the U.S. defaults on its debt obligations, it would create global uncertainty. And the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, Shalonda Young, adds,
don't let anyone tell you this is about fiscal responsibility or deficit reduction. It is not. This is about using the threat of a catastrophic default to extract deep cuts that the American people do not support.
Republican Senator John Cornyn tells Fox News the president is to blame for the impasse.
The fact of the matter is both Republicans and Democrats know the debt ceiling has to be addressed. Speaker McCarthy has done his job. House Republicans have done their job. And now it's time for the president to do his job.
President Biden and top congressional leaders will meet Tuesday on the crisis. Georgia residents coping with 2 mass shootings in 2 days. In Colquitt County, a gunman killed his mother, his grandmother, and a fast food worker yesterday and then took his own life. And a man accused of shooting 5 women in an Atlanta doctor's office, killing one, remains behind bars. And yet another mass shooting in Serbia, also the second in 2 days. The drive-by shooting in the Eastern European country killed 8 people and wounded 13. Police have that suspect in custody.
Serbian state TV says an attacker used an automatic weapon, shooting randomly at people near Mladenovac, about 20 miles south of the capital, Belgrade. On Wednesday, a 13-year-old boy shot and killed 8 students in a school guard in Belgrade. Afterwards, thousands of people filled the streets near the school where it happened. They were crying and hugging outside the school.
Fox's Jill Nato. In Pennsylvania, 3 fired police officers who pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges in the death of an 8-year-old girl will learn their sentence today. America's listening to Fox News.
Say goodbye to high-power bills with Budweiser. Purchase 12 packs of Bud Family and Bud Light Seltzer and scan the QR bucks inside for your chance to win a home solar package with install from Generation Renewable, a choice quad play bundle from GTA, and other solar gear. Plus, all the codes you scan can earn you points that you can redeem for great Budweiser gear. Just check the Current Guam app to schedule your prize pickup. Must be 21 to enter. See currentguam.com for details. Budweiser reminds you to enjoy responsibly.
Kulay na kaibigan at handa para sa inyo. Ang bangko ng kinabukasan, laging maaasahan. Pan Pacific, where others plug branches, we place roots.
A report reveals the IRS has been stockpiling weapons and ammunition.
A report from the government watchdog group Open the Books shows the Internal Revenue Service is adding to its law enforcement capabilities. The group says it reviewed records showing since 2020, the IRS spent $2.3 million on ammunition, more than $1 million on ballistic shields, and another $1 million on various other gear for criminal investigation agents, plus $474,000 on Smith & Wesson rifles. The IRS tells Fox the purchases are routine and assist roughly 2,100 criminal investigators to, quote, conduct criminal investigations into tax violations, money laundering, cyber crimes, as well as organized crime involving drugs and gangs. The IRS adds the agency purchases the required amount of ammunition and firearms to conduct its official duties.
Fox's Mark Meredith. Embattled St. Louis Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner says she will resign following calls from Republican leaders for her ouster alleging negligence. In a letter to Republican Governor Parson, the Democrat said she will step aside effective June 1st. Gardner, who is black, says efforts to remove her were politically and racially motivated. A famous astronaut gets an honorary promotion today.
The second person to walk on the moon can add another accomplishment to his out-of-this-world resume. Retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Buzz Aldrin will get an honorary promotion to Brigadier General. The 93-year-old was part of the Apollo 11 mission with fellow astronauts Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins that landed on the moon in 1969. This comes after Congressman Ken Calvert of California sent a letter to the Air Force asking for the promotion. The honor comes only a few months after Aldrin was remarried. In Washington, Ryan Schmelz, Fox News.
And investors sought safety in bonds and gold over worries about potential bank failures. The Dow lost 287 points. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Huff a day. Ray Gibson here to let you know that Nissan Guam will make your first 3 payments on select models like the Sentra, the Murano, the Armada, Titan, and everyone's favorite, the Frontier. It's never been easier to get into a brand new Nissan. No down payment required. Just sign and drive away. See them first at their Upper Tumon showroom or visit NissanGuam.com. Get yourself pre-qualified for financing. On approved credit, some conditions may apply. See NissanGuam.com for details.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they will continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $4,100 by calling Family Finance in Hagåtña at 671-475-4545, Upper Tumon 671-647-5626, or in Dededo 671-633-4473. You too can become an I'm a Tailgater. Oh, sorry. I stumbled. I didn't get the intro.
That happens to the best of us, Jose.
I know. I don't know what's going on. If you want to stand tall in your I'm a Tailgater t-shirt, just point your browser to thepoint.gu, the official website of this radio station. There you can see the picture of the shirt, sporting a beard. When you click on the picture, it'll take you to the website where you can order your shirt. When it arrives, put it on, take a selfie, and send that selfie to the Points WhatsApp at 671-797-8255. And you too can become a part of the Tall Tales Rogues Gallery. Oh, and without further ado, since we are talking about new pro-abortion legislation being offered, we bring you the Lulian Guerrero testimony when she was public civilian Lulian Guerrero, testifying against what would have become Public Law 3290, the Infant Child's Right to Life Act. And here she is testifying in front of our legislature against that act.
And members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Lilian Guerrero, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts and comments regarding Bill 195-32. I am aware that there is already federal legislation that addresses the issue at hand, thus making this legislation unnecessary. As I read the bill, what was glaring to me is that you are now walking into the realm of medical practice that is not your area of expertise. By passing this bill, you're saying to me that you are allowing a special interest group to say that you and they know better than the experts in obstetrics, family practice, pediatrics, neonatology, and medicine. By way of this bill, you have taken away the discretion, the responsibility, the acumen, and the judgment of that medical professional who is on the ground experiencing the circumstances and is more equipped to make the decisions. There are medical standards vetted through scientific research and medical knowledge that govern the practice of doctors and guide them in making their decisions. By way of this bill, you have said to our doctors, who are well respected and highly regarded in our community, we have no confidence in your ability. This bill not only diminishes the medical profession, but it further carries them to jail by criminalizing them if they refuse to abide by the mandate. By way of this bill, you have affirmed that doctor to have committed aggravated murder, and for that crime, we will put that doctor in jail for life. And by the way, they will rot in jail because you are not eligible for parole, work release, or educational programs outside the confines of prison. If this bill passes, we as a community, through your representation, will have mandated a government policy that ignores medical expertise and puts not only our doctors, but also our nurses, medical assistants, our physician assistants, and any health professional present at that event, and we're putting them in jail. These health professionals are treasures. They are valuable resources. We are working hard to recruit and retain them, and now we send them a message that they may end up in jail for practicing their profession. I know and truly believe, Senators, that this is not the route you want to travel. This bill is very anti-quality of life because it does not consider the expense that the family will incur as a result of mandating treatment that most likely will not result in a quality of life outcome for the infant. Instead, what this bill does is it will burden the family with enormous medical bills. On the conservative side, if care and treatment is given for a year, that family or the government, if the infant becomes a ward of the territory, will at a minimum pay $273,000 a year just on hospital room charges. This does not include pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, and health professional time. So it will be $273,000 plus a year. This means taking away limited resources that could be used by others that may have a better chance of a quality of life. I know that some will say you cannot put a price tag on life and money should not be a factor. But the reality of the situation is the family, the government, does not have the human and economic resource to provide the care that is required to sustain a life that medical science will tell you is not living a quality of life. You struggle daily to meet the challenges of healthcare costs. We saw that with the hospital and health insurance debates that you guys made. And now this bill will further add on to the challenges when it does not have to. Lastly, I would like to make this comment. We all have a greater challenge in our island. The community is more concerned on how we can decrease our unemployment rate of 13.3%. We are very concerned on how we can work together to provide more jobs because our job growth has been stagnant over the last 5 years. We are very concerned about access to health care. We are very concerned that we are not screaming to the federal government to include us in the health insurance exchange so that we can have affordable health care to everyone. We are very concerned about how we can provide affordable housing to many first-time home owners. We are extremely concerned about the rising crimes we see today. People do not feel safe in their homes. Women are scared to go to the grocery stores alone because they fear that they could be robbed in the middle of the day. Employees do not feel safe in their work environment. Domestic violence is on the rise. Sexual assault of minors and rape cases are on the rise. You have in your campaigns pledged to work on these issues. You were all voted to help address these concerns. The issues you ran on were why you are my senators. Most of the voters did not vote for you based on whether you are pro-choice or pro-life. Please, let's get back on track to the more compelling issues at hand that have a greater impact to the quality of life of our people. I ask that when you are considering this bill to seriously consider the negative consequences of this piece of legislation that I have just enumerated. Please talk to as many people as you feel is necessary. Talk to the experts that can give you factual and objective information. I trust that you will do your due diligence, and I know that you will act in favor of the greater good of our community. And in so doing, you will arrive to the conclusion that this bill should not pass. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Bob, let's be clear. This bill was not an anti-abortion bill. This bill was the Infant Child's Right to Life Act. So when she goes there and testifies and says, we did not vote you in to be either pro-choice or pro-life, her choices that she's alluding to or she's recommending are to allow an infant to die there on the table rather than to give it help or even the necessary basic needs any born infant has. And this is what makes this atrocious.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's sort of like she's saying, why are you so worried about abortion? You should be out collecting the junk cars along the road, as though equal importance, right?
That was her main concern.
Yeah.
Everything else but the infant.
Yeah, I picked up on something that I kind of missed as many times as we've seen this. And she, at the beginning of her testimony, she says she alludes to a special interest group. Don't listen to a special interest group. Now, who would that special interest group? Would that be Big Pharma?
No.
Companies that manufacture contraceptives?
Nope.
Scalpel vendors?
Possibly, but nope.
Yeah, wouldn't this just have been citizens of Guam who were concerned about life?
Exactly.
And she labels it a special interest.
Parents are special interest groups
Yeah.
because that's what they're talking about. A baby who was born to parents.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Okay, well, we'll be doing this again next Friday. We do it every Friday. It's just something that everybody on the island, we want everybody on the island to see this, to know exactly how far we've fallen.
It really is amazing how many people do not know about this testimony and what she has been pretty much advocating for at least 30 decades.
Yeah, really. Okay, I had Ken Leon Guerrero on the line. I want to talk to Ken about the port. Maybe Ken, call back, please. I still want to talk a little bit more about that hearing, and I have to thank Ken because Ken called the other day and told us that he'd been to the hearing and gave us sort of a summary of some of the things that happened and suggested that it would be worth my time to watch it. Well, I usually listen to what Ken has to say. He's not there?
That wasn't him.
Oh, call back, Ken. I listened to what Ken has to say, and he was right on point this particular time around. It was quite a show. So if you want to elaborate, Ken, call back. I want to talk a little bit about YTK here before I leave the subject behind. Earlier in the hearing, Frank Santos. Now, Frank Santos is another one. Frank Santos worked at the port for years. He's the former harbor master of the port. Now, let me see who that is. If it's Ken, I don't want to make him wait any longer. No, it's not Ken. It's another Joe. Okay, I'll be right with you, another Joe. So Frank Santos had been the harbor master of the court, and then he gets put on the board and has been the chairman for the last 10 years, and he sat through all of this stuff. And his performance was not as egregious as Baza's. It wasn't very good either. So earlier in the hearing, Frank Santos, who had been a longtime board member, was asked about YTK issues by Joanne Brown, a former port GM. The two had worked together during Brown's time at the port. The concurrent port general manager, Rory Respicio, sought to initiate mediation talks with YTK, actually YTA's counsel, Champ Calvo. Well, the Supreme Court decision on the arbitration dispute with the company was pending, quote, to see if there was any opportunity to stave off the arbitration award to the failed fisheries business. The governor's administration later said its position was to wait until the court handed down its decision. Well, I guess Rory didn't get the word from the administration because he was ready to start talking settlement. As Brown spoke on the Guam YTK case, Respicio attempted to enter the senator's discussion with Santos. Now, this was pretty interesting. Rory was sitting in the chairs back in the peanut gallery, not sitting up at the witnesses' table. But when we got into this YTK thing, Rory moves up to the witnesses' table and tries to start testifying. But the chairman,
did it go well?
Yeah, the chairman didn't let that happen. Santos said he never authorized anybody to meet with Respicio, as that would be micromanagement. Well, that just drives the point home. He never authorized Rory to do it. Rory took it upon himself. Quote, your general manager was attempting to engage with principals of YTK. Were you aware of that? And you're not aware that he ever approached you for any funding to pay for a mediator? That he had a specific time and day to meet at his office, Brown asked, and that came out that there was a time and day where Rory was going to meet at Champ's office. Well, it might have been okay. Maybe he was going to take Louis Baza along with him. Ask him, Louis, you don't have any Civil Service Commission meetings tonight, do you? You don't? Hey, come on, go with counsel over me to his office, over to counsel's office. Santos said, quote, he cannot remember that no one had approached him to make appointment to YTK. He couldn't remember. Did your general manager ever relay to you and disclose that he may have had business dealings or consultancy with the principal of YTK prior to becoming general manager? Now, that's something we hadn't heard of before, Brown added. Santos said that sometimes when members of management would have discussions with YTK, other entities, they usually would meet with legal counsel. Well, that would have been Mike Phillips, who obviously did a crackerjack job for the port because he won the case at the Supreme Court. Here's another quote. And when they find any solution from their meetings, then they make a recommendation to the board. The board is never involved with sitting down with other agencies to make any decision. That's not our job, Santos said. Well, that's the end of the story. That's the end of the report, but it's certainly not the end of the story. A very interesting and very distressing story, to say the least. Okay, let's find out what another Joe wants to tell us about a special interest group. Go ahead, another Joe.
Yes, Bob, I represent the pro-life anti-abortion special interest group.
That's what we know. We found that out, yeah.
There you go. So it's interesting how everyone keeps saying that it's not that important to focus on whether someone is pro-life or anti-abortion or pro-abortion choice, that they're elected to do other things, worry about other stuff. Yet we've got at least 4 new senators, freshman senators, I'm not sure if I'm forgetting anyone, who have been voted, who coincidentally are pro-abortion choice. In theory,
they must be a special interest group.
Possibly, Bob. So it must be interesting enough or important enough to pay attention to. Just saying.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd chime in and I'll keep listening. Thanks for your time, Bob.
You got it there, another Joe. Thank you for calling. Okay, next item on the card here is Government of Guam versus the Navy. And it goes like this. The Government of Guam federal lawsuit against the Navy, which seeks compensation for environmentally hazardous ORDOT dump, could be resolved without going to trial, according to federal court documents, which state GovGuam and the Justice Department are currently participating in mediation. Why didn't Louis Baza tell us that at the hearing the other night? I can't imagine the government of Guam going into anything like mediation or negotiation without having their top negotiator right there with them, with some templates. GovGuam sued the Navy in 2017, seeking fair and equitable compensation from the Navy as a potentially responsible party for the dump, which opened before World War II? I don't think so. No. Well, the island still was under a naval government. The military continued to use the dump for decades, even after it was turned over to the civilian government, the lawsuit states. The dump was closed in August 2011 because of Clean Water Act violations, and Guam now uses the Luzon landfill for its solid waste. The parties are currently negotiating proposed consent decree language regarding past costs. I'm going to make a request here. Please do not let Louis Baza anywhere near these proceedings. The local government already has spent $69.5 million to close the environmentally hazardous dump. Long-term monitoring and maintenance of the site are expected to cost $31.3 million more, according to a status report filed this week in the district court. GovGuam is gathering evidence in this case against the Navy, and a website created last year by the Attorney General's office is still active. It asks the public to share memories and evidence about how the ORDOT dump was used by the military. Guam's solid waste operations, except for the dump closure, are managed by the Guam Solid Waste Authority, but the federal receivership could end entirely within a year, according to a joint status report filed Wednesday in the district court. Receiver Gershman Brickner Bratton currently is responsible for finalizing the dump closure and post-closure plan, but the status report states responsibility for the dump could be transitioned to GovGuam. The report provided an update about the ongoing investigation and increased leachate levels at the dump, which first were brought to the court's attention last summer. At that time, the amount of leachate flowing from the dump had quadrupled. Well, that's about all the news here on this mediation, but mediation is different from negotiation. I'll give you an idea how mediation works. There is a mediator. And I'm going to talk about the traditional form of mediation. There's another form called the understanding-based mediation, but I won't go into that. So you have the representatives from the two sides, and the mediator will enter a closeted room, closed doors, with each of the parties, and each of the parties, he'll chat up each of the parties, find out what their arguments are, and find out if the if the party has any kind of a settlement position. And then he goes back and forth between the two parties in isolation, gets this really good handle on their respective positions, what they're looking for, and he'll go to party A and say, okay, this is what B says. B says he wants $50,000, but he'll go for $40,000 if you do Y and Z. Can you do that? And then A says, no, I can do A, but I can't do, and he goes back and forth. So the mediator has the whole thing inside his head, and he can see how the whole thing works together, fits together, and he parcels it out in small chunks to each of the parties, trying to bring them together. And if you've got an effective mediator, it can be a real good way to resolve disputes. Much better than arbitration. If it were me, I wouldn't touch arbitration with somebody else's 10-foot pole. The results, YTK is a classic example of some of the cockeyed results that you can come up with arbitration. And the ironic thing is that, maybe 30, 35 years ago, arbitration and mediation were brand new ideas. And the idea was that they were supposed to alleviate the overload on the courts. Take these cases out of the courts and let mediators and arbitrators settle them. They could do it faster, better, and cheaper, and remove the clog in the court. And boy, I'll tell you what, you compare arbitration with a court case, there's no comparison. Look at YTK. So that's where we are with the Navy. So I'm going to ask everybody in our tailgater audience out there and our international radio listening audience that during the pendency of this mediation, let's keep our fingers tightly crossed and hope we get a good result out of this, because it could mean millions of dollars for our dump. Well, we don't call it the dump anymore. We call it a landfill now, right? Yeah. And interestingly enough, what used to be the dump is once upon a time it was a hole in the ground. I remember when it was a hole in the ground. Now it's a significant terrain feature. And I'm tempted to start a contest to name it something like Mount Smith or Mount Martinez or something. No, not that.
I don't know.
Yeah, Mount Leon Guerrero.
How do you get there? Just follow your nose.
Yeah. Okay, so let's head for Wrigley Field.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important. Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Express yourself into the groove. The Guam Chamber of Commerce celebrates its 99th anniversary at the Dusatani Resort on May 6th with the theme of Madonna's Vogue. The Chamber's membership includes many corporations, large and small, entrepreneurs, and nonprofit organizations. Members play a key part in making Guam a star-bright place to live, work, and play. Let's congratulate the Guam Chamber of Commerce and its members on celebrating its 99th anniversary.
Okay, so here we are at Wrigley Field, world's most beautiful ballpark, located in the near north side of Chicago. I've been there a few times myself. Maybe go back again someday. So, next item on the card is it involves Tim and Tom Fisher and Tall Tales, Calamity Jane, etc. And today I can say that Senator Parkinson is wont to support Tom Fisher. Now, by way of background, we know that in 1973, the United States Supreme Court, in its infinite wisdom, decided that states that had criminalized abortion had violated the United States Constitution. They found a constitutional right for a woman to have an abortion during the first trimester of her pregnancy. Well, actually, they found the right for the doctor to decide she needed an abortion, right? Yeah,
That's
not the
right,
woman,
not
but
the
the
woman.
doctor. And and of course, I spend a lot of time just reading the Constitution. I carry a copy around with me. I've got this copy here, this right here in the studio, that I refer to repeatedly. I try not to rely on my memory. I like to go straight to the words. And I've been through the Constitution a lot, and I've never found the word abortion in there at all. And neither could the Supreme Court. But Mr. William O. Douglas, who was a justice of the Supreme Court, some folks said he was not only the justice of the Supreme Court, but that he was a dirty old man. But I'll have to check that out. Maybe I'll talk about that on Monday. But he was a hard lefty, and he is the classic example of what I don't like to see on a court or actually holding any official power in government. And that is that what I don't like to see is a person using his own personal preference, is the power of his office to affect his own personal preference and nothing else. People who have governmental power should be relying on statute, constitution, something like that. Not, well, I think I'm going to do it because I think it's the way I think it should be done. That's just not government. That's the difference between a government of laws and a government of men. So Douglas apparently wanted to go forward with a statute, or actually striking a statute in Connecticut that punished the use of contraceptives. The case was Griswold versus Connecticut. Griswold versus Connecticut criminalized the use of a married couple using artificial contraceptives. I'll come back to that in just a second. But Mr. Justice Douglas, in a case that came before the Supreme Court, not on that fact pattern, but on a fact pattern that somebody had set up, Mrs. Griswold had set up a Planned Parenthood clinic and was giving lectures about how and where to get an abortion. And suit was brought, went to the Supreme Court of Connecticut, the Supreme Court of Connecticut found for Connecticut, appealed to the Supreme Court, and Mr. Justice Douglas said, well, yeah, there isn't any mention of the word abortion in the Constitution, but it's in the penumbra, the emanations of the Bill of Rights. You take the 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th, 9th and 10th Amendments, and in the penumbra of those, you'll find this right of privacy.
You know, I looked in your book there, the Constitution.
Yeah.
I can't find the penumbra section.
Yeah, it's hard to find. Yeah, you have to have special glasses. You have to have these kind of glasses in order to see it, Jose.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So based on that, he said there is a constitutional right to privacy that prohibits the use that strikes down any state law that prohibits the use of artificial contraception. Not long after that, a case called Eisenstedt versus Baird was decided on an equal protection basis because it said, well, if married people can use it, then you can't stop single people from using it either. So both of them go. And it didn't stop there either, because guess what the foundation from Ogerfell versus, what was his name, Hamlin? The Supreme Court case that said that Herman and Henry are entitled to get married if they so desire. That was built on the foundation created by Griswold versus Connecticut. Now, to show you, I think I've already shown you that is a very sloppy foundation. It's a foundation built on eggshells at best. But it's even worse than what I've told you, because that was not the first time the Connecticut statute, it was called the Comstock Law. It was not the first time the Comstock Law came before the Supreme Court. Maybe 10 or 15 years earlier, a case called Poe versus Ullman came before the Supreme Court. Same statute, Connecticut. Somebody wanted to have the Supreme Court say that statute was unconstitutional. Supreme Court declined jurisdiction. They said, you didn't bring us a justiciable case. That statute has been on the books, like in the 1800s, and there had never been a single prosecution. Because the statute didn't criminalize possession of contraceptions. It didn't criminalize marketing contraceptions. It criminalized the use of contraception. Now, imagine...
I don't want to be the cop on that beat.
Well, imagine trying to put on your proofs. How do you gather evidence on that? How do you go before the judge and show that there's probable cause that a crime is being committed and that these two people are committing the crime? So it was never prosecuted. But, this was not about the statute. This was about proving a point. Once again, the issue wasn't even close to being the issue. The issue was the revolution. People wanted to open up the whole area of sexuality. The beginning of sexual anarchy.
That is also the premise for Roe versus Wade, where they looked for a plaintiff.
Exactly. Yeah. They found her, and ironically, the poor lady actually had a baby, which what the pro-abortionists classify that baby as? Collateral damage.
It's
that sick.
It is.
Yeah. I read somewhere there have been 22,000 babies born since the Dobbs decision, and I'm sure that's exactly what the
gnashing their teeth.
It's collateral. What a tragedy! 22,000 babies born. Yeah. So this whole thing is built on a house of cards. And as I've mentioned before, if you study the idea of judicial realism or legal realism, it holds that judges decide a lot of cases based on, their gut reaction, how they were raised, what their parents were like, their education, their friends, their social groups, etc. And, that decision comes to them, and then they'll go around and get out the books and scrape together some high-flowing language that doesn't help them reach the decision. It only helps them describe the decision. And that would be my characterization of this whole thing, starting out with Griswold versus Connecticut, right on down through Planned Parenthood versus Casey. But, we had our own statute, Bell's Law, enacted in 1990. The ink was hardly dry on Governor Ada's signature when Anita Areola and a lawyer from the ACLU beat a trail to the district court and asked that it be enjoined based on the speech aspect because the bill prohibited advertising where abortions could be obtained. It's kind of like that Connecticut case. So the entire statute was enjoined in 1990. The legislature never introduced a bill to repeal it. When Dobbs came along, a lot of folks, myself included, said that statute would be resurrected. You'll recall that I went into the Indiana rule right here on the show about that. Leaving on a jet plane said, no, I found a case said that it was void ab initio. If it's void ab initio, you can't revive it. End of story, etc. So let's head for Churchill Downs, and we'll come back and try to wrap this up.
Join us on May 12th as we host our annual PBS Guam Pledge Drive. Tune in and show your support for quality, educational, and entertaining programming. Your contributions help us continue to bring you thought-provoking documentaries, captivating cultural programs, and engaging children's shows. So tune in to PBS Guam Friday, May 12th from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. and pledge your support to help us keep Guam enriched, inspired, and entertained. Viva!
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Their services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Okay, so here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, 6 furlongs. I cross the finish line and finish another glorious week with you tailgaters here in Tailgater Nation. And for 70 hours, I just stumble around like a zombie because there's no tall tales. It's tough. Somehow I make it through it, and by gosh, I'll be back here on Monday at 1600. Full of piss and vinegar, ready to start another week of tall tales. You can bet on that. Okay, so I was bringing up the speed, up to date here on where we are with abortion. So Doug Moylan is attempting to dissolve the ACLU injunction forbidding the enforcement of Bell's Law. The governor took the matter to the Supreme Court, and I'm happy to say that I have filed an amicus brief telling the Supreme Court, butt out. You ain't got jurisdiction here. Just shut up and put your robes away. We'll see if they do it. In the meantime, Thomas Fisher put together, if it were a standalone bill, the harshest abortion bill ever seen. It goes way beyond Roe versus Wade, and and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. By the way, did I tell you about Roe versus Wade and George Washington, Jose?
No, what about Roe versus Wade?
Yeah, we think this Roe versus Wade is something new that somebody had to deal with. Actually, Roe versus Wade is something that George Washington had to deal with when he crossed the Delaware. Roe versus Wade. Or, yeah. So, so then Tom Fisher comes along with an extremely harsh bill that he wants to use as a legislative submission. If the governor signs it, it goes out to the voters, and if a majority of the voters vote for it, it then becomes the law, just as though the legislature had passed it. Now, Tom has gotten fire from both sides. He's got pro-abortionists that don't like it. He's got anti-abortionists that don't like it. And I opined yesterday that, if people are if you got people on either side of the fence throwing rocks, the last place you want to be is sitting on the fence, because they're going to be throwing them at you. And that's where Tom Fisher is. So then Won't Parkinson picks up the ball and runs with it. And Jose, tell me what Won't Parkinson is up to.
Okay. Let's see here. It's I'm going to read this thing from the Post.
Of course.
It's the bill would enact abortion rights without requiring a public vote. In the ongoing debate over abortion on Island, another legislative proposal has been thrown into the ring. However, Bill 11137 from Senator Won't Parkinson isn't necessarily introducing anything new. The measure would enact the Health Protection Act of 2023.
Hold on a second now.
Mm-hmm.
The Health Protection Act?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you tell me it's about abortion?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm. You got to read it to find out whose health it's protecting.
Go ahead.
Already another part of another proposal, Bill 10637, without need for a public vote. The misappropriately named Health Protection Act would ensure the right to provide and receive abortion services on Guam without burdensome limitations or the truth.
Burdensome limitations. Yeah. Go ahead.
Bill 106 was dubbed the You Decide measure by its main sponsor, Senator Thomas Fisher, because it would allow voters to decide in the next general election if the Health Protection Act should become law. And that's Y-O-U decide.
You decide.
Not you, period, decide.
Bah.
Parkinson.
I thought I'd ram that one through, Jose.
Oh, boy. Parkinson, an abortion rights advocate, said the Health Protection Act presents great ideas for expanding abortion access on Guam, but disagreed that it should be put up for a public vote. I agree with Senator Fisher. You should decide. You. Let me get this.
Yeah, so that's Fisher, and Jose is going to continue on with Fisher's bill, because it's really interesting to see these two guys who are kind of on the same side fighting with each other. But we'll let Jose pick that up in just a second. Go ahead, Jose.
Okay, got a couple of them. After he agrees with Senator Fisher, Parkinson said, the people of Guam do not get to vote on what you do with your uterus. We are a republic, a representative democracy. A republic can handle tough social issues without punting the ball to an expensive legislative submission process. A republic can take testimony from the public, weigh the issues, and decide on legislation. A republic can do all these things because that is what a republic is meant to do.
You know, for once, I agree with Parkinson.
Right? He continued by saying a referendum or legislative submission in the case of Bill 106 would probably cost between $75,000 to $100,000 for the Guam Election Commission and ultimately the taxpayers, EWE, you. If we did that for every bill submitted just in the first 100 days alone, that would be about $10 million. Not $10, $10 million, he added. Fisher is a Republican senator, but has identified as pro-choice.
Pro-choice. What is he choosing, Jose?
I did not know that was a gender choice. He is choosing to choose.
Choosing to choose. Is he one of those? Sometimes they say pro-choice when what they really mean is pro-killing.
It has to be, because that's the only choice that's on the table here.
Yeah.
He briefly commented on Parkinson's measure during a Rotary Club of Guam meeting Thursday, in which he was the guest speaker. Said Fisher, the Parkinson bill, because it's not pitched as a submission for a public vote, the senators will have to make a choice, Fisher said. He introduced a standalone bill, which is great, but to me, as a practical matter, the Guam legislature is going to find it very easy to go in and monkey with their own legislation. We went from yous to monkeys. Elaborating further Elaborating further to the Guam Daily Post, Fisher said he did not believe that simply enacting the Health Protection Act would go far enough, considering changes in the constitutional landscape surrounding abortion. In a landmark decision last year, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned decades-old case law protecting abortion as a constitutional right in the nation. As a result, states and territories now have greater ability to regulate abortion, including the imposition of outright bans. Fisher has commented about the implications of the decision and what it means for other long-held constitutional rights. He said he wanted a firmer foundation for the rights expounded in the Health Protection Act, which he argued would come from a public vote. Now this is different. Now it's not just about abortion.
No.
The people of Guam have told the legislature that this is the law they want. It would be much more difficult for a senator to come in and start, as I use the phrase, monkeying around with the law because they know this is the expression of the people, Fisher said. Is it a perfect foundation? It's not. But look what's in our hands. We don't have much left. They ripped it out of our hands. Ripped what?
The right to kill babies.
Oh, okay. So he wants to rip something else out of something else.
Yes.
We don't have much left. They ripped it out of our hands. This constitutional protection is gone. We have to do what we can to establish it here on Guam and protect abortion, killing the unborn, here on Guam, the senator added. And abortion remains legal on Guam, but there are legal battles taking place that might change the status quo, including cases over the enforceability of an old abortion ban. Attorney General Douglas Moylan is seeking to avoid the injunction that was placed on the ban in light of the U.S. Supreme Court's decision. The AG has encountered opposition, including from the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration, which staunchly supports maintaining abortion rights and access. As Parkinson noted in his announcement of Bill 111, Guam recently joined the Reproductive Freedom Alliance, a nonpartisan coalition of U.S. governors committed to protecting and expanding reproductive freedom in their jurisdiction, along with collecting scalpels, poison, saline solutions, and suctions. I added that part.
Very good. I'm glad you did.
Senator Fisher called his bill, "You Decide." I agree. You should decide. You should decide what is best for you. You should decide what it is what you want to do with your body. You have agency to your own destiny, and the government should never stand in the way of that. We do not put the fundamental rights of others up for a public vote, Parkinson concluded in his release on Bill 111.
Very good, Jose. We're just about the end here. I've got Pete Scrow on the line. Pete, I'm not going to be able to get to you today. I want to let Flora in just for a moment here before we sign off. Good afternoon, Flora. Go for it.
Hey, good evening. It's so hard to hear you. Hold on. Let me try to make this a little. Could you hear me, sir?
I can indeed. Yes.
I don't
gotta go, Flora.
Well, maybe I'll call you back. It has to be about the or.dom, actually.
Call back on Monday. Let's
I
go,
will. Thank you.
Brandon.
is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A subway killing sparks protests. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. New Yorkers angry over the killing of a black homeless man on a train, demanding charges be filed against the man who put him in a chokehold.
The circumstances of his death, the reasons for the actions of the former Marine who put the man in a minutes-long chokehold are all under investigation, are all open to interpretation, and have divided New Yorkers and many across the country. Jordan Neely, a black homeless man with mental health issues, is being held in that chokehold by a former Marine who, according to witnesses, acted after Neely had been pacing the subway car, yelling that he was hungry and thirsty and ready to die. The Marine apparently grabbed Neely and held him in the chokehold until Neely went limp. Neely died later in the hospital.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt. An ex-UC Davis student is jailed, accused of stabbing two men to death and injuring a woman. Davis Police Chief Darren Pytel says 21-year-old Carlos Dominguez meets the definition of a serial killer.
He was wearing a backpack, and in the backpack was a large knife that was consistent with one that we were looking for based on evidence from the first homicide.
A jury in Washington, D.C. convicts 4 members of the Proud Boys of seditious conspiracy for their role in the Capitol riot.
Over the past 2 years, the department has secured more than 600 convictions for a wide range of criminal conduct on January 6th, as well as in the days and weeks leading up to the attack.
Attorney General Merrick Garland, former Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio, and the other 3 members of the far-right group face up to 20 years in prison. A 5th member convicted of other felonies. America's listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, Fox News Rewind Financial Crisis 08.
This is an extraordinary period for America's economy.
A look back at the biggest financial crisis since the Great Depression.
The market is not functioning properly.
And the events leading up to it from the people who were there.
You started to see the Dow plunge in synchronicity with the vote on the House floor.
Subscribe now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you download podcasts.
Never, ever 100% trust Wall Street.
New from the Fox News Podcasts Network.
I'm Dana Perino, co-host of The Five and co-anchor of America's Newsroom. Join me for Season 3 of my limited-time podcast, Everything Will Be Okay. I'll chat with guests who have had major career or life pivots and people who have persevered and are leaving a trail of inspiration for all of us to follow. Of course, we'll have some laughs along the way. Make sure you subscribe to this series wherever you download podcasts. I'm Dana Perino, and everything will be okay.
One day after a gunman shot 5 people in Atlanta, killing 1, another man opens fire in South Georgia.
The Colquitt County coroner says 4 people were fatally shot in Moultrie, Georgia, northeast of Tallahassee, Florida. Telling the Associated Press, the gunman killed his mother and grandmother at 2 neighboring homes and a woman at a McDonald's restaurant before taking his own life. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation confirming multiple fatalities at different crime scenes. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
Serbia also dealing with 2 mass shootings in 2 days. Police arrested a suspect in yesterday's drive-by shooting near Belgrade that killed 8 people and injured 13. That followed a school shooting that killed 8 students. Another revelation surfaces about Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and a wealthy Republican donor.
A lawyer representing Thomas acknowledges Dallas billionaire Harlan Crow paid for 2 years of private school tuition for Thomas's great-nephew Mark Martin, and that the justice didn't disclose those payments. ProPublica previously also reported Crow gave Thomas luxury vacations and bought property from Thomas's family. Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal calling the revelations outrageous, disgusting, and deeply degrading to the fabric of the court. But Republican Senator Josh Hawley argues the left is campaigning against Thomas. In Washington, Jill Nato, Fox News.
And Prince Harry is expected to arrive in London today for his father's coronation.
A lawyer
And that is going to happen. He will be there, but he won't have a role in the coronation. And looking at Dow futures, they are up 97 points this morning and ahead of April's jobs report, which comes out later today. Yesterday, investors sought safety in gold and bonds over worries about potential bank failures. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Hey there, folks. It's me, KFC's Extra Crispy Colonel. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the original recipe, but in this sizzling summer heat, I'm feeling a little extra crispy. My KFC Extra Crispy Chicken is freshly double-breaded and fried to a luxurious, mouth-watering bronze. You see, Extra Crispy KFC Chicken isn't just a product, it's a lifestyle.
Pick up your KFC Extra Crispy meal today. KFC is extra finger licking good.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling on it.
The dad joke. Corny, groan-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
What did the buffalo say when he dropped his son off for school? Bye, son.
So take a moment to make your kid laugh, because dad jokes rule. Make your kid laugh today. Go to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
After May 11th.
Congressman Omar, where are you, Congressman Omar? There you go. God love you. I'm not supposed to get in trouble for saying this, but you look beautiful tonight.
3 million jobs have gone to China. You're sitting here and telling me that we have too many jobs in this country? Are you serious?
Freedom is back in style. Welcome to the revolution.
Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
Sean Hannity. The new Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America. Stay right here for our final news roundup and information overload.
All right, news roundup, information overload hour. Glad you're with us. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. Remember during the campaign over and over again, Joe Biden saying, I never once, not one time, ever had a conversation with Hunter or any family member about the business dealings of them, the foreign business dealings of them. Here's Biden answering questions on Hunter's business dealings now that we know that he straight up lied to the American people.
Hey, President, how many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period. And what I will do is the same thing we did in our administration. There will be an absolute wall between personal and private and the government.
Do you stand by your statement that you did not discuss any of your son's overseas business dealings?
Yes, I stand by that statement.
Now, James Comer, who's heading up the investigation into the Biden family syndicate, is pointing out that, remember, we thought it was three. We thought it was Jim, Joe's brother, Joe, and we thought it was Hunter and then his business partners, not family related. Then we found out, a week and a half ago, it was 9 family members. Now it's 12, and it may be growing still. Now, remember, they've made a lot of progress now with their suspicious activity reports now coming in, over 170 of them, also finding all of these LLCs that seem to have been created for one reason and one reason only, and that's to funnel money to varying family members. Now, there's a lot of questions here. One of the top questions is, okay, did people pay taxes on that money? That needs to be looked into. Number 2, what did they do for that money? Number 3, what did Joe know and when did Joe know it? Did Joe Biden, as his son Hunter implicates in his own laptop, did he give half of his income to Pops? Why was he so angry about paying for Pops' home repairs? And was 10% for the big guy Joe Biden? Now, the Washington Post is reporting that prosecutors are nearing a decision on this felony tax charges and lying on his gun application charges. But to me, that's the low-hanging fruit. We expect that could happen at any time at this point. But also now we have Joe Biden directly implicated in fact, a brand new legally protected, highly credible whistleblower disclosure. And I told you we're going to be hearing from a lot of whistleblowers This is huge. According to this bombshell,